Most people saw a headline and moved on, but something deeper shifted beneath the noise this week. What unfolded between Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the exploding fight over the Epstein Files wasn't just another political spat. It was a diagnostic moment, the system exposing its fault lines in real time. A recalibration of influence, loyalty, and transparency was happening right in front of everyone. Imagine the moment it snapped. Reporters aboard the aircraft, engines humming, the president in a relaxed and confident mood as he laid out wins, priorities, and forward momentum. Then a question lands about Greene, once one of his most unwavering allies. Instead of diplomacy, he cuts sharply, saying she has drifted from his thinking, hinting voters won't like it and challengers are already circling. Then the escalation hits. Posts, sharp language, pointed jabs about loyalty and alignment. Messages designed not just to criticize, but to signal a shift in protection. Greene fires back, refusing to stay silent. She releases screenshots of messages to show she tried to reason with him, describing threats she received after his attacks, framing her stance on the Epstein Files as a moral stand she wouldn't abandon. The flashpoint sits at the center of their conflict, the push to release the Epstein Files. Trump wanted message discipline, focusing energy on affordability, borders, jobs, and economic momentum. Greene insisted transparency had to come first. Two leaders, same party, same base, yet now driven by completely different priorities. That clash transformed a disagreement into a full political rupture. To understand why this exploded, you need context almost no one mentions. Epstein wasn't random. He was a nexus of wealth, power, politics, and scandal. His crimes and controversial death created a vacuum where secrecy ruled. For years, the truth stayed buried in sealed documents and partial records. When Congress pushed to force disclosure, it wasn't routine procedure. It was a transparency bomb placed under Washington. Trump's logic, viewed through a builder's mindset, is clear. He wants attention on real-time issues affecting daily life, not on scandals that weaponize innuendo. He sees the Epstein narrative as a trap, a tool to drag him back into old fights designed to drain momentum. After years of investigations and political battles, he views this as another hostile narrative, ready to be twisted by opponents. There's another layer to Trump's resistance. His name appears in older logs and documents tied to Epstein's social circles, not with accusations, but proximity. He says he cut Epstein off long ago, and evidence supports that, yet nuance rarely survives in politics. Screenshots and headlines become weapons. From a risk standpoint, it's obvious why he wanted this vote contained before it spiraled into distraction. Greene moved in the opposite direction. After meeting survivors and hearing their stories, she treated secrecy as intolerable. She believed the system had failed these women for decades and transparency was overdue. Whether driven by conviction, ambition, or both, she tapped into a sentiment that runs deep. People want truth, not excuses. Her district echoed that loudly, backing her stand for full disclosure. This set up two incompatible imperatives. Trump wanted to narrow the narrative and avoid being dragged into a scandalous vortex. Greene wanted to widen it, insisting the public deserved every detail released. And then the remarkable happened. Despite Trump's clear stance, Congress overwhelmingly advanced the vote. That shouldn't have been possible under old party rules, yet it happened with ease and unity. This vote became a stress test of Trump's influence. For nearly a decade, his endorsement shaped careers, and his disapproval ended them. Yet on this issue, lawmakers broke formation. They read the public mood and decided transparency was safer than appearing to shield powerful figures. The pressure from voters outweighed traditional loyalty, revealing a shift in how the movement calculates risk. Trump felt that shift immediately. After opposing the push, he reversed course and suddenly supported releasing the files, saying there was nothing to hide. It wasn't his first instinct, but a forced adaptation to the political environment. This pivot showed that the movement's gravitational center is no longer perfectly aligned, and even its most dominant figure now adjusts to public demand. The base's appetite for transparency has become a force politicians can't ignore. The distrust of institutions, the hunger for unfiltered information, and the rejection of elite secrecy now override old loyalties. The same energy that once fueled distrust of intelligence agencies and media institutions now pushes for full exposure of the Epstein records. That shift reshapes priorities across the party. Greene positioned herself as the vessel for that energy, intentionally or not. She argued that accountability mattered more than protecting anyone's political standing. She framed transparency as a moral responsibility rather than a strategic calculation. And by challenging Trump publicly, she revealed something rare in modern politics, a willingness to oppose the leader of her own movement on a core principle. In Trump's worldview, loyalty and confidentiality are central operating rules. Private conversations should remain private. Internal disputes should be resolved quietly. When Greene released messages and implied outside pressure or lobbying influence, it crossed a boundary he considered foundational. To him, it signaled betrayal. To her, it signaled necessary honesty. Neither perspective was compatible with the other. This clash wasn't just personal. It exposed the deeper tension inside populist movements. How do you remain anti-elite once you become an elite institution yourself? Trump is no longer an outsider watching the system. He is the system's chief operator. Greene, by contrast, can still posture as the insurgent demanding sunlight. That divide created two distinct visions of what the movement should be. Zoom out, and the larger pattern becomes clear. The modern electorate has been shaped by the internet age. People no longer trust polished statements or carefully managed narratives. They want raw data, original documents, and verifiable proof. The Epstein Files became a symbol of that demand. Years of partial disclosures and sealed records created a vacuum filled with speculation on every side. When Congress finally moved to force the release of those files, it wasn't just legislative housekeeping. It was a public declaration that the era of selective transparency was collapsing. Trump tried to moderate the process, fearing political distortion. Greene insisted on full exposure. Their clash mirrored a broader national conflict between message control and truth at any cost, each carrying real consequences. The vote's outcome demonstrated that transparency had overtaken loyalty as the dominant force. Both parties supported the release. Only one Republican voted no, and even that was for concerns about protecting innocent people. This alignment revealed how deeply the public's distrust of secrecy runs. Politicians chose the safer path, standing with voters who demanded an end to hidden information. This moment signaled a turning point inside the movement. Trump's power remains immense but no longer absolute. Lawmakers acted independently, sensing that voters value transparency over hierarchy. Greene's stance, once unimaginable, became a blueprint for others exploring political futures beyond Trump. The movement is shifting from loyalty to a single figure toward loyalty to broader principles. The conflict also revealed how fragile political relationships become when tested by real disagreements. Weeks earlier, Trump and Greene shared stages, aligned messaging, and a unified front. Now they exchange accusations and public frustrations. The speed of that breakdown shows how political bonds, built on shared goals, can fracture instantly when those goals diverge under pressure or moral conviction. This wasn't merely a feud, it was a structural diagnostic. It showed voters how power behaves when confronted with transparency demands. It showed politicians that their base is watching more closely than ever. And it showed the country that two competing visions now define the movement, one focused on strategic stability, the other on revealing everything, no matter the political cost. The Epstein Files became the perfect stage for this collision. They combined corruption, secrecy, institutional failure, and decades of unanswered questions. Releasing them challenges powerful networks across politics, business, and culture. For voters, sunlight feels like justice. For politicians, it carries unpredictable fallout. That tension explains why this issue ignited conflict at the highest levels of the movement. This moment forces a fundamental question. Is the movement still defined by one leader's judgment? Or has it evolved into a broader mission centered on exposing corruption everywhere it hides? Greene's push suggests she believes the movement can outgrow its original figurehead. Trump's initial resistance suggests he believes unity depends on message control, not diving into volatile archives from past eras. 24. Neither vision is entirely wrong. Transparency brings clarity but can unleash chaos. Message discipline preserves focus but can resemble avoidance. The The conflict between these approaches created an inflection point. Politicians saw the public rejecting secrecy. They recognized that standing against transparency carried more risk than embracing it. That calculation reshaped how leaders respond to voter expectations. The movement is now confronting the reality that transparency and loyalty cannot coexist without friction. If truth is unconditional, it must apply even when it's inconvenient for allies. If loyalty is absolute, it demands silence when truth becomes dangerous. The Epstein Files forced everyone to choose which principle they valued more, and their choices revealed the direction the movement is beginning to take. Politicians recognize that voters have shifted permanently. People now expect access to information once hidden behind institutional walls. They demand verification instead of narratives crafted for political safety. That's why the vote passed so overwhelmingly. Leaders understood the consequences of appearing protective toward powerful individuals. Aligning with transparency became the only viable option for future credibility. Shinty 7. This conflict also hinted at a subtle rebalancing of influence. Trump remains a dominant figure, but lawmakers are beginning to think about their careers beyond his tenure. They sense that the base wants independent judgment, not automatic obedience. Greene's defiance reflected that shift. Her stand suggested that challenging Trump on principle is no longer political suicide but a viable path forward. The deeper story is how quickly influence structures adapt when exposed to public scrutiny. Political systems behave like markets. They respond to pressure, incentives, and shifting demand. The base demanded truth, not choreography. Lawmakers adjusted instantly. Trump recalibrated his stance. Greene advanced her position. The system revealed its flexibility and its fractures all at once. This was not chaos. It was a stress test, a moment where competing priorities collided in public view, exposing which values held the most weight. Transparency triumphed because the public insisted on it. Loyalty wavered because it no longer carried the same rewards. The movement learned that truth-seeking energy is now stronger than message containment or controlled. The implications stretch far beyond the immediate feud. The public will expect similar transparency in future controversies. Politicians will be judged on whether they support releasing information rather than protecting institutions. The movement will continue shifting toward principles that outlive individual leaders, and the divide between strategic caution and open disclosure will define upcoming political battles. The feud also highlighted how rapidly alliances can dissolve when pressured by moral or strategic conflict. Trump and Greene once amplified each other's messages and shared stages with unified purpose. Now their split shows how political loyalty can vanish when confronted with deeper questions about justice and truth. It revealed how unstable alliances become when foundational values no longer align. This moment wasn't about personalities, it was about architecture. It exposed how influence moves when systems are stressed. It showed that public demand can overpower political hierarchy. And it demonstrated that transparency has become the new currency of trust. The public wants full disclosure, unfiltered facts, and accountability that reaches every corner, regardless of who gets embarrassed. The real takeaway is that a movement built on challenging elites now faces its own internal test. If it truly values exposing corruption, that must apply universally. If it values unity above all, then transparency becomes conditional. The Epstein Files forced that contradiction into the open, revealing which leaders embraced sunlight and which tried to manage it. The consequences will echo forward. As the story unfolded, it became clear that voters, politicians, and institutions were all renegotiating their roles. Voters demanded clarity. Politicians recalculated their loyalties. Institutions felt pressure to justify secrecy. The Epstein Files became a symbolic test of whether the system could evolve toward openness or cling to its old habits of concealment and narrative control under political strain. The feud served as a reminder that political movements are living systems, constantly adapting to new pressures. Trump sought strategic focus and message discipline. Greene demanded aggressive transparency regardless of consequences. Their clash revealed the tension between maintaining stability and pursuing truth with no guardrails. That tension now defines the movement's identity more than any slogan does. And beneath every headline was a simple, unavoidable truth: the public will no longer accept curated stories. They want the raw data, the documents, the unedited record. They want to judge for themselves. This shift marks a new phase in politics, where leaders can no longer rely on narrative framing alone. The appetite for proof has overtaken patience for political explanation. The Epstein Files dispute showed how powerful that appetite has become. By pushing for full disclosure, Greene aligned herself with a growing demand that crosses party lines. By hesitating, Trump signaled concern about narrative hijacking. Their collision revealed the divide between those who fear chaos from transparency and those who see transparency as the only path to restoring trust in institutions.